Friends, as I read this poem by one of my favorite contemporary poets, I invite you once again to check in with your body. That's what I was coaxing you all to do when I was asking you about the chair and the space that it's in. And it's hard sometimes because there are all these sounds around us and these thoughts flooding us inside as well. But do your best. That's all we can ever do. So this poem is named Adiós. And for me, it is a meditative reading. Adiós. It is a good word, rolling off the tongue no matter what language you were born with. Use it. Learn where it begins, the small alphabet of departure. How long it takes to think of it, then say it, then be heard. Marry it. More than any golden ring, it shines. It shines. Wear it on every finger till your hands dance, touching everything easily, letting everything easily go. Strap it to your back like wings or a kite tail, the stream of air behind a jet. If you are known for anything, let it be the way you rise out of sight when your work is finished. Think of things that linger: leaves, cartons, and napkins, the damp smell of mold. Think of things that disappear. Now think of what you love best, what brings tears into your eyes. Something that said adiós to you before you knew what it meant or how long it was for. Explain little. The word explains itself. Later, perhaps, lessons following lessons, like silence following sound. This season, I've been preparing myself for a series of adioses, a series of goodbyes. The First Parish in Cambridge Unitarian Universalist congregation, which is where I've been serving as an intern, is also the congregation whose People of Color Caucus served as pivotal support for me through what was, for the first year at least, wholly online divinity school. Despite the excitement of graduating from div school and being one step closer to formal religious vocational service, this is something I'd been looking forward to, I think officially for like over 10 years, unofficially and much more silently, far longer. Despite all this excitement and joy, I learned that due to ministerial best practices, I would have to say goodbye. I would have to say goodbye, and I have to say goodbye to a community that I've been a part of for over 4 critical years of my life. First through that caucus, and then growing to know more and more of you as your intern minister. Now, disclaimer, I mostly hate saying goodbyes. I do like closing rituals and ending celebrations, and I can appreciate the social and cultural reasons behind many of them. And altruistically and aspirationally, I do believe that the end of something is the beginning of something new, whether one has the name for it or not. Further, logically and ethically, I agree with the Buddhist concept that from present moment, everything changes. From moment to moment, we change. Hence, if we think about it in those terms, or I'm thinking about it in those terms, each relationship in our lives can be viewed in a constant and iterative state of goodbye. Yet, in that process, that discomfort feels harder to hold in my body. Neurologically, my brain has trouble saying goodbyes. I'm not sure if it's because of the letting go, the finality of marking change. One of our congregants here at First Parish told me that one of the most profound experiences in his life has been with people he's known for a very short time. I'm paraphrasing him. He said it much more beautifully, I think. So the truth of his words and his message to me assuaged and anchored me for a time. And it still does, but I'd also been feeling that loss still stuck in my heart, unable to reach the page. As the daughter and granddaughter of Cuban exiles forced out of their homeland, I have a complex relationship with goodbyes. They seemed important, but unnecessary and never guaranteed. My grandfather reminded me yesterday, when I was talking to him about today's sermon, then that instead of adiós, he says hasta luego, until next time. And I know the feeling growing up that one can hold on for an entire lifetime to the hope of returning, of that hasta luego, as well as the pain of never being able to go home again. Home as it was, family, community, forever altered. I asked my thesis advisor, Mark Jordan, who had worked with me on a piece that I've still yet to bring to fruition, but so many here have lovingly said, yes, Cassandra, you can call me Cassie now, we'll help you do that. Well, it's called Choral Grief and the Liturgy of Lament. And choral as in the choral animal that I would dive with along with my grandfather and my mother and my brother. My father would either stay in the boat or back on land. So I reached out to Professor Jordan to ask if he had any thoughts or guidance, and as I considered my adiós. I thankfully ran into this Naomi Shihab poem that I had read to you all, and I felt like adiós was a way in. I told Dr. Jordan, I have been writing and thinking about what it means as the daughter and granddaughter of exiles to spiritually process and, as Resma Menachen says, metabolize goodbyes. Spoiler alert, for me it's very hard, I tend to be avoidant, and it's lingering. It's hard to do this soul work. After being stuck on the idea of goodbye as a gift and free writing into the Three Wise Men and the gifts of the Spirit, and a few nights ago in spiritual direction, visualizing myself as the algae being expelled from the coral, when I stumbled across that poem by Nye, she had me wondering about honing into the etymology of adiós. I'd always been in awe of Professor Jordan's etymological prowess and was hoping that he might have some thoughts or suggestions for me. I started at the Real Academia Española to little effect other than noting that it can also serve as the end of a refrain, the goodbye, adiós. But I did find some interesting stuff on Merriam-Webster, namely its shortening of a phrase, commending one to God upon departure, and that it is traced back to the 1630s. I was left wondering what or if there is a link to Spanish conquest there. And I told Professor Jordan I still have Harvard library access for a week. I'll read to you his response, his loving and generous response in a moment. But I told him this as well, as part of this prelude to please help me. I'm leaving my congregational internship soon to start a summer unit of clinical pastoral education at McLean Psychiatric Hospital, and I must step away from a community that I've been part of since before I began divinity school. I am getting good care around that, but as a result, the sermon feels like it's also marking the next stage after divinity school. Not just for myself, but for the congregation. Plus, my abuelo Ando, who is coming to graduation, will also be attending the service, so there's that. Le dije a mi profesor, abuelo, que tú ibas a estar aquí y sentí la presión de, ay, tengo que hacer algo bueno. Y también, and also, I really feel like I need to practice and model clear and solid goodbyes as best I can in this stage of the work, in this stage of my ministry as it begins. Professor Jordan so lovingly wrote, after he helped affirm and mark these series of transitions, said, adiós and its siblings in the other Romance languages comes from a Latin phrase, adeum, to God. The meaning was, I commend you to God. The original Spanish seems to have been something like adiós seas. Also, in medieval French, adieu vos command, or command, commending you to God. The French word came into Middle English and still remains as in the phrase to bid adieu. But already in the Middle Ages, the sense of commendation seems to Dr. Jordan, and to me, I guess now it's a good argument, to suggest another meaning, namely, that we are all always headed to God. That human journeys end in God no matter whether we think we're going in the meantime. Now, this question of God or not God is something we hold lovingly, sometimes painfully, in its complexities in Unitarian Universalist communities. As someone who was formerly raised Catholic with Tibetan Buddhist ethical influences at home, I see the human journey to God, to not God, to spirit of life, to love, most clearly in states of awareness in the present moment. Moments like Nye writes of. Moments like Reverend Rob brought up months ago when talking, or about a month ago when talking to us about the moment-to-moment in Pema Chodron's work and analysis. So in conversation with that, I would say that one of the gifts of Unitarian Universalism is that we get to be aware and poke into and nudge that mystery and wonder and that interdependence with one another in relationship. We get to sit or stand or dance or lie down with the knowing that none of us has all the answers, but together in community, we arrive at some I would say in closing, the hardest thing about saying goodbye is the truth of it. The painful reality that something's changed or will very soon. And sometimes all we can do is submit to it, to a force greater than ourselves, in community, out of community, maybe back in again, and permit that to carry us through. Amen, and blessed be. Before I invite us to sing, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude. First, for the choir and for Linda, thank you all for coming today and really coming and showing up today, so thank you. It meant so much to me to see your faces there. There's a special joy walking in, a bit like when they're practicing. And I feel like I get this, like, I don't know, it's like a little gift before the service. Yeah. I have many people to thank who are here in this congregation. And in honor of one of my early Unitarian Universalist minister teachers, Reverend Wendy Pantoja, I'm not going to try to name everybody because I don't want to leave anyone out. So what I will say is a thank you for the moments that we've shared, whether it's a glance, whether it was the gift of a flower from someone's front yard, whether it was an update on someone's life. I thank you all, because we affect each other in so many ways that we don't even know. Maybe that's part of the gift.